institution in that school district. And we take a short stop and we come together and look and think about hospitals and healthcare. And I'll go back to our project where I went through the state for on the lookout for success stories. Before we hear from Susan Bridle Fitzpatrick, first from Healthcare Without Harm, and then from the Colorado Healthy Hospital Compact and Inka Deco, who will speak on whole grains in institutions. And hopefully at the end, we can have a very strong discussion, and even after K through 12, discussion around bringing these grains to the local level and local and regional discussion and into institutions. Very difficult scenario. So I'm going to share my screen first and do a quick introduction. Hopefully you can see this.
Yep. Yep, we got it.
Five-year project, but when we started collaborating with Nourish Colorado, at the time it was Live Well Colorado, we wanted to focus on success stories and developing pathways to successful local food and regional food integration and procurement in institutions. And so we started with about 10 different institutions, and I'll show you that. There was definitely a process in identifying those institutions. For those of you who don't know, UCCS made this pretty big transition to self-operation away from a corporate managing system in food service, and that allowed us to do a lot more local food procurement. And so, and it also brought students and student employees into the dining halls to work, and it brought a lot more focus on farm to institution and possibilities with Food Next Door and some of the other initiatives that we successfully implemented, like Grain School, for example, an academic course that's now been on campus for 5 years. Without going self-op, this probably would have not been possible. So we were on the lookout for other, interesting models around the state. And we were identifying various K through 12 higher education institutions and hospitals. And I'll show you in a second who those were. And the idea was that we would identify other pathways to successful procurement, local food procurement in institutions, come up with a research paper, which I'm now starting only to work on, case studies. And what we set out to do were these documentaries. Had I known 3-4 years ago what it takes to make these vignettes or shorter films, I would have never done this project this way. So you saw in the module, these documentaries are there for inputs. So we'd be very grateful if you could give us some inputs on the 2 that I posted. They're still work in progress, but it probably will take us another 2 years to do these. And then the most important, I think, is the phase 2 implementation and outreach. And this perhaps is a possibility for us to come together today and then in the future to think about how to bring more regional beans and grains into institutions. As we know, this local food procurement has mostly focused on meat, milk, and produce, and not grains and beans. So it's an interesting idea to think about this outreach in the future. Nourish Colorado has taken an incredibly important role in this with the Low Pro Co workshops in many, many regions and empowering food service professionals in a very interactive way and very effective way. And Fernando is part of the class and he could probably step in at some point to talk a little bit about it. But here are just a few images of the food service directors that I was hunting down and interviewing in this process. So the institutions are listed here that we looked at. And again, we were just looking for success stories. We did not interview anyone who had no local food procurement or told us to wait for a while until they perhaps could make some strides. So we were very clear, and it was really quite easy to find them. There were not that many. And so when you look at the local food procurement champions, it's really in those K through 12 institutions that we found most of the local, up to about 25% in those schools. Higher education was a lot lower. At the time, we were supposedly at 19%. I'm not exactly sure if we counted beer or not, local Colorado beer, but I can tell you most universities are not even at 10%. So, you know, these numbers are to be taken with a grain of salt, I think. And then for the hospitals, it was a pretty sad story to see, but also an inspirational story, especially from Southwest Health, with about 5% locally procured from food hubs. So many of these institutions, especially higher ed and hospitals, were working with food hubs, less so in the other areas. But you can see some central kitchens, really strong outreach to the farmers, to the ranchers, strong bidding processes, and you'll understand in a second why for that. The bidding process is an important process, because as soon as we go beyond a certain amount, for Colorado, it's 5,000 for K through 12. For higher education at UCCS and the CU system, it's 10,000. The procurement piece has to go to bid. And that means that oftentimes, and most of the time, it's the highest quality at the lowest possible price that is being procured. There are some good strides here, at least what we know from the CU system. Equity, diversity, and inclusion is becoming more important here in the procurement realm. And so it's possible that the value proposition will be bigger for local food in the future, and people will acknowledge the fact that all scales of family farms are going to fit in here. You can see economically the impact is amazing, right? For most of the school districts, it was 1 million or 25% of their total food dollar going to local food. And that makes a huge impact in the local economy. So really important to note that local food procurement, including grains and beans, is going to be an important piece. But when I looked back at my 10 interviews, in terms of what's being procured, none related to grains and beans. And so this is really an opportunity, but also not an easy one, because we're dealing with major commodities and price differences that are difficult to handle. What most of these schools and institutions did were, especially the K through 12, were a lot more scratch cooking, less processed, more culturally appropriate foods, less canned and frozen, more education, less waste, more organic, more antibiotic free, and more whole grains. And the whole grains, you know, were mostly the whole grains in breads, tortillas, pizzas, bagels, pastas, oatmeals, breakfast cereals, cornmeal, rice, and cookies. In Colorado, most institutions, and Stephen can certainly correct me, but at the time when I interviewed Boulder Valley School District, it was ultra grain also, which comes from Ardent Mills and has, you know, it's a white whole wheat. It's a good source of fiber, which means that it meets between 10 and 19% of the daily value for fiber. So these are still whole grains, but as we know from the Whole Grain Council, this meets about 50% or 51% of whole grain recommendations. So it's still good, but what's also been, what I've also been able to identify were that some institutions went back, for example, to white tortillas because of the cultural preference and acceptance. And there's definitely this difficulty in gaining that traction with whole grains. In oatmeal, for example, and going to like a porridge breakfast, some mentioned, you know, small steps and small changes over time will be easy. And then, of course, we'll hear from experts here in the room that will show us what other steps are good to take. So other success stories, typically integrated gardens, teaching kitchens, and educational programs. And that's pretty clear. And then just, you know, to do this successfully, these are all common themes that I identified when I did the qualitative analysis of these interviews. The vision alignment of certainly the the idea of schools having good food and focusing on health and wellness, and even that integration of health and wellness. Administrative support infrastructure such as central kitchens, and training of food service staff, farmer and food service management collaboration. So going back into the farming and learning from farmers, and then understanding the policies for prime vendor contracts and being really, really good in writing these RFPs. And then the academic integration, certainly school gardens, cooking with children. And one of our grad students worked on the lunch hour and identified the issues with the American lunch hour in comparison to the Japanese lunch hour. And so there's certainly an opportunity here also with grains and baking and bringing that back into the realm of home economics. Challenges are many. Budgets came up all the time, seasonality and supply, deliveries, logistics, and then the policies. And for higher education, very similar, the value proposition of food. What does this, a university, what's the role of a university in feeding students the best food possible with an educational mission? Campus stakeholders and just this real important piece of leadership and having an important leader in the higher administrative team. Rebuilding these Food Act connections, transforming ordinary food service to experiential dining experiences in college. So really providing these unique experiences for students like we have with Food Next Door. And the academic integration, experiential education as well. And then many challenges. We could go on. Sean and I have worked in this for 10 years now in a university with an up and down scenario. And certainly have the last point here I added today, because when you have food service job turnover as well as directorship turnover, everything can change if it's not institutionalized. So sometimes in education, particularly with our food service directors and with building advocacy on campus, we've used something like this to show that the value chain, the local grains or the local produce is not a competition. It fills a potential, educational mission, especially in these institutions with focus on education. Certainly the prices are higher, but they fit perfectly in a supply chain with different value propositions. So this is just something that I leave you with. And I would like to give the word now to the Wahconah School District and Barbara Schank. Thanks again, Barb, for being with us. I'm so happy to meet you and learn from you. I'm going to give you the screen share.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to look at our program in depth. I was telling the group earlier that when we get working on in our systems and we just have time in front of us, looks like, sorry, there. Time passes and you don't think about all the things that you've done, and being a champion is, I don't know, it's always like trial and error and putting, one foot in front of the other and sometimes looking back. So this was a great exercise in looking back for me. And it gave me a real inspiration coming out of COVID with, I oversee 5 kitchens, about 5,000 students, K through 12. And it was a good inspiration for me to shed COVID and get ready for the next school year. So thank you, Nana, for offering this opportunity to me and to help this whole initiative move forward. And I'm super thankful to be able to represent Minnesota here. I am part of Cafe 110. Our school district is called ISD 110. So there lies the Cafe 110 there. Our goal is always to encourage healthy, curious eaters. This little picture that you see in front of you has 3 little guys. Looks like it's kind of spring maybe. They have one of our local meals. It's kind of tricky to see here, but it's a meat, cheese, and cracker tray. So we're making some cheese niblets, and then that's a local summer sausage, and then cheese curds. There are definite challenges like we kind of just reviewed, but building a team that has kind of the same inspiration and same love that I do is what brought us together to start down this path of farm to school. My background is a tiny bit unique in the fact that my grandparents owned a dairy farm, and in the process of growing up, I helped harvest grains and I helped collect grains, and we milled it and built bread. We made pasta. We made fresh cheese that went into some of our pastas, and of course we had the eggs and any kinds of like chicken and beef and pork. But being part of that culture, part of that garden experience, part of the orchard that they had on their farm, the effort of building a meal together and paying attention to the seasons and having a giant bowl of apricots on the table and trying to decide what to do, it was kind of unique in the fact that it didn't happen in most people's lives, but it was real common in mine. And that was kind of the theme and the lifestyle that I grew up in. So I was immersed in this effort of building a meal and having the kitchen be the heart of a home. So if that kind of mindset, I got my bachelor's degree in dietetics and set off into the world of nutrition with as a licensed dietitian, and worked in it's called WIC around here, Women, Infants, and Children. So it was a group that did lots of nutrition education. Then I went to long-term care in the healthcare system, and then I landed in schools. And when I landed in schools a while ago, I started to think about I didn't have kids quite yet, so didn't have that opportunity to like think on those terms, but what do I want to share with kids and families? And I started to build this team. And so you'll see this team that's around me here. I'm in the middle, and they're all super energetic. They're all hard workers. And as you know, in food service, that's what you need to pull off a successful program. And as it kind of rolled out, bringing farm to school was something that I did at the beginning of my career, which was a long time before farm to school ever came to the forefront of our programming. And I had a support person in our office that helped me kind of create this idea of love eating authentic food as kind of the direction. So that was my original thought to farm to school. It's kind of a LEAF initiative based on my desire and love for ecosystem, for being a good steward of the land, good steward of coaching, teaching, educating, nutrition, wellness. So as you can kind of see, it turned into a little bit of a concept that rolled into farm to school really nice. We do some recycling, we do some thoughtful repurposing of containers to our farmers. We teach kids to take what you're eating, or take what you're going to eat and eat what you take, so we have less waste. So we kind of went down that concept, and I was able to continue to build my teams, and our programs continue to grow. And within the last 4 or 5 years, we started a new concept in our school dining program called the Flower Shop. So we have Scratch, who is our little logo there, who's kind of kicking off the concept of local scratch and real foods. And so it's a division that can be supported by any of the kitchens, where they are challenged to use challenge categories of dairy, eggs, fruit, grains, herbs, meats, different kinds of sweeteners, vegetables, things that we can locally source. So we kind of have a list of concepts. We have a la carte snacks, fresh beverages, house salad dressings, bakery items, classroom celebrations. You can read the concepts on the right as the menus, and all those components, all those items have ingredients that are featuring some of our challenge ingredients. And then grains and seeds were kind of always in my mix of interest because of that farm background that I had, which always kind of edged out like new ideas. We were doing different kinds of grains at my grandparents. They had flax, they had canolas, sunflowers, of course, wheat. And so those things have always kind of been in the back of my mind as to how we incorporate it into what we're building and making in our program. And it's easy actually to incorporate a lot of that to some degree. You can do 10%, 20%, 50% of some of those grains to capture the local piece, and the grains are a really fun place to do that in. So we have some kind of signature things that we kicked off, and like I said, when I dug back into time, I forgot about some of these things that we did, but biscotti was a really major item that we concepted out. We are making giant batches. You'll see the two women who like built our recipes, huge. And so school, like if you operate the National School Lunch Program, you have to have a 2-grain component that allows you to capture a reimbursement so that you get paid for the meals that you're serving. And the biscottis that we did, we had some varieties. We had a gingerbread, a cinnamon sugar, a chocolate chip, and I think an orange. So had a crew who developed the recipe, and of course we're limited by space and equipment, so it's all built according to our space, our ovens, our mixer size. This is a new one that we just concepted just last year. We always had this desire to do bagel bites. All of us had a passion for fresh bagels, and we've been concepting out and building our own schmears. And so the schmears that we were making, a lot of times were like strawberry rhubarb or a blueberry or a maple sunflower seed. And so we started this bagel bite idea, which turned into let's make some polka dot pizza bites, which turned into a pull-apart pizza. So we're incorporating a local wheat flour, honey, and the cheese is again a local product to us too. That turned out to be a fun, like a savory and then also a sweet breakfast item when we served it for breakfast. Then buckwheat was always one of my favorite really funny grains. That we had a buckwheat pancake every now and again, and I found a recipe that looked really intriguing. And this whole concept of like, oh, let's build something that kids will try and like, it's kind of tricky to work through the process of trial and error. So they look nice, they bake nice with the production equipment that we have, and then to present it to kids. So this happened just before COVID hit. They're beautiful cookies. They're wonderful with that fresh glass of Minnesota milk that we have up against it. So that was another fun project that we showcased. And then these are just some miscellaneous things that we incorporate: wheat flour, local flax, some rolled oats. You can kind of read through that. Breakfast is a really nice place for us to capture that reimbursable component where we can get the breakfast bread, or you'll see on the bottom right, we did a square pancake, which is a concept that helped us to serve kids faster and for us to like pull off really truly dropping pancakes in the top left. It was really tricky to make enough pancakes for 800 kids to come through the lunch line and get a fresh pancake. So we concepted it out and did square pancakes, which turned out to be really fun because we could put multiple toppings on and still get that local grain component and maple syrup into it. We did some special events with some rhubarb sticky buns when it was spring. That chocolate chip cookie dough that's in the middle turned into a really fun hit with kids. We could do a snickerdoodle, we could do a oatmeal, a monster cookie, different kinds of cookie doughs as an a la carte were fun. The bottom right was another fun concept. We shot for a farm to school grant that we were looking at doing beef as a project, and so we wanted to get a hamburger patty maker and build a freezer to house it. And so one of the components was to the rules set was to partner with a Native American tribe to incorporate something that was the local. So the wild rice turned into a component that went into our hamburgers and meatballs. That was fun, or is fun. You'll see we did a whole bunch of different hummus. We did a pickle. This is a pumpkin. We did a chocolate chip. We did a brownie batter hummus. Those are fun ways to get kids to eat the lentils. And I when I first put this together, I wasn't thinking lentils, but we have some other good lentil concepts. There's on the top right was a cool thought too, that when COVID hit, a lot of school districts went to cereal bars so that it could get packaged fast and could get thrown out the door and into kids' hands so that they could get breakfast. And our General Mills started to run out because the demand across the country was huge, but it just so happened that we were already making our own. We made a s'mores, we made a, can't think of kind of the other top, like apple crumble. I can't remember the other one, but we were making our own cereal bars. So that was kind of a fun way to keep our our items going out the door, but still incorporating our local and our scratch. The muffin tops were another really cool thing. They pop onto the pan really nice. There's no paper involved, so our waste is minimal, and they fit in kids' hands really well. You'll see this ice cream base on the top left, and that was an idea that came to me because our family made homemade ice cream with milk and with cream from the farm, and then the thickener was always wheat flour. So we're working on that. We don't have that fully pulled off yet. You'll see some of the other concept gingerbreads or the biscottis there. And then like I mentioned earlier, that we made pasta when I was younger, and one of the grant concepts that we incorporated from farm to school was purchasing a pasta machine. And we named, she'll come up in a minute here, but we named her Martha after my grandmother. And so we make upwards of 26 or 27 plus menu items using pasta off that machine. So pierogies is one. Top right, I think, are some ravioli. So the incorporating grains goes a long way in our system with a la carte and with menu components. We did a COVID, we had kind of a down day. My grandmother was famous for making drop donuts out in the country, and so I did a drop donut day, and nobody had ever made those before, so that was kind of fun. We used the local flour with that. We make our own Rice Krispie bars for a la carte. We toss in rolled oats. Our zucchini bread is our local flour and oats. Okay, so here's our pasta machine in the background here. So you can kind of read the list of items that we make with the machine. It was an idea that spawned into a really successful program for us, where we can have local spinach or local even like squash from our garden get mixed into the ravioli filling. The cheese that we have is a local product too. Semolina flour is what we use. Here are some of our meals on trays. Pierogies was a fun change up, just to kind of make it as a side. So how do we do it? Well, we do it with the partnership of these farmers, and you'll just see some random farmers here. And I don't get a picture of all of us, but the best part about having the relationship is that they come into our kitchens. They don't necessarily have the time to sit with our students, but they talk to my teams. In every kitchen they have like a Q&A whenever they pop in. When did it happen? How does it happen? What do the bees look like? On the bottom left is a honey farmer, apiarist, and so we partner with the FFA that's local, and of course an apple orchard and some dairy farmers. We have our own school garden and orchard, so we get different kinds of produce out of that. We're always on the lookout to partner with new people and educate ourselves more, so that we can carry it to our kids, and the quality, and then just the curiosity of it. And again, how do we do it? We have this little van who helps us. We have kind of a central kitchen. I said earlier that all of our kitchens can concept out the flower shop idea of like a la carte or of entrees. But this Greg on the right side is the guy who hits all the kitchens, touches base with everybody, tastes things, and shares it out, and then shares it across the district in our van. I've surrounded myself with people who have incredible pride and passion with kids and with nutrition, with the food that they serve. It's a huge sense of pride that they have pushing out the meals that they do. Does anybody have questions?
Let's see. Yeah, do we want to have maybe Stephen go next, and then we open it up for questions to everyone, you think?
I couldn't hear anything.
Oh, okay. Or we can just grab a few, and then we go to Stephen and Andy. So one of the questions is, what is your biggest challenge as far as funding?
It's funny, this isn't a common answer, and I don't know that it will stand the test of time, but I just do my job and I really don't pay attention to money. It kind of like works its way out, and it won't add up until you just kind of get brave and you step out. And of course you don't go all in, you start small. We've been doing this, gosh, I think this is my 14th year, and I said I started this idea way back, like we'd buy cucumbers, or when we start to make our own pickles, then you leave that for a little while and then you come up with something else. But I think being brave and starting small, like just buy a 50-pound bag and see what you can do with it. Throw it in the kitchen and see what they can come up with. I don't know.
Well, maybe I have a quick question if nobody else would go. So
yeah,
Barb, when you were talking about the recipe development, of all those beautiful recipes, at what point do you evaluate like the acceptability from the kid's standpoint? Are you all in on a recipe, or do you kind of in the testing phase bring some things out and get some bites and get reactions? How does that go?
We it's almost always in a testing phase, because just kind of like your kitchen, things will be in season, things will be out of season. It'll go crazy, like that edible cookie dough. It was as hot for, gosh, a year and a half, and all of a sudden it kind of faded off. So then we shifted gears, and then all of a sudden we started making the black bean brownies, and all of a sudden those are a hit for a while, and then they fade off. And then it's almost like fashion, things kind of keep coming around and around. And so you kind of have a list so we don't forget what we've done, but we kind of move on to, like, we try something else and then it gets a little grab, and then we kind of go that direction for a while, and then we'll come back later, but at a small degree so they don't get fatigued by it. And it's always interesting.
Thank you. That's really great.
Thanks.
It seems like you've empowered your, employees, right, with this question of recipe creation and, kind of this revitalization of food service jobs that seems so vivid when we bring in more local food. I think we've seen this too at UCCS, that when we have more fresh food, then the food service workers are just more excited about, what they're working with, and they know, which farmer it comes from, and it just brings them something special back into the profession that originally was related to the farm, right?
And that Greg component where somebody will make a little sample, I don't even, like a tiramisu or something, and he'll share it out, and then they'll get all kinds of raves, or they'll get a little feedback. It's a little too something, and they tweak it. The camaraderie that has built in my district is super unique, and really like helps everybody succeed at this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really amazing. Thanks for sharing this. I almost had tears in my eyes looking at all your beautiful photos. Thank you. I saw that Mary also joined us. Hi, Mary. So I'm going to give the floor now to the two videos. We're going to show those two videos first, and then we go to Boulder Valley School District. Sean, you're on the spot.
Thank you. I'm gonna cue it up in a moment. It's I wish it was as clean as the news, but it's not always that clean. So hang on one second. All right, here we go. Share my sound, and I'll try to watch the chat box. Hopefully this will come through. You never know here. So let's hopefully you guys will hear this okay.
Yeah, we're really excited to be dropping off our first delivery of local biodynamic heirloom wheat flour that was grown right here in Boulder on Black Cat Farm. We're really excited not only to bring food and grain to the school, but to help to bring our expertise and our passion to help educate and teach kids more about food, specifically these old heirloom grains, and meeting local farmers and seeing what the rebirth of this local grain economy could look like.
Right.
Awesome.
I'm gonna queue up the next one here. think we have another one that's through Facebook. So hold on a second.
And that's it. Then Stephen, we don't have to talk at all. We just say, okay, any questions?
All right.
So we are very excited about another collaboration with the Colorado Grain Chain for a healthy dessert next week, the lemon cake with strawberry sauce. And this time we are also collaborating with Jones Farm Organics, which is from the San Luis Valley. They've been a long-time local farm that we've purchased purple potatoes and special potatoes from, and now they're growing grain as well. So we have 300 pounds of their Sonoran wheat. It's coming up en route to Boulder today to be milled into flour and then brought to our facility tomorrow. The extra special piece is that our longtime employee, Carrie Jentz, who's acknowledged as the best baker on our team, came up with a recipe for this lemon cake based on her childhood recollections of making this lemon cake with her grandmother in Wisconsin. So just a really great story and an awesome collaboration. We look forward to serving this delicious, healthy dessert.
All
Very
right,
nice.
beautiful. Thank
Very
you
nice.
guys for those videos.
Thanks, Sean. I'll grab the mic for a minute and then I'll pass it off to Stephen and Mary. I actually want to back up a couple years. My then sixth grader was in our local school here in Boulder County, and Steve and I were talking one day with the local food facts and fun teacher Tyler Anfinson, and we were sort of brainstorming about what we could do to show up in a classroom with fifth and sixth graders. And can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
And and create some passion around food making. And the food facts and fun class that Tyler teaches is mind-boggling. The stuff he does in class is he's a risk taker. He'll do anything from bagels to nixtamalized corn, you name it. So we came up with this class that was a 3-day class. It actually started before we even got there, where the kids made their own sourdough starter. So they spent a week making a sourdough starter, and then we came in and we ground wheat on a little portable mill with the students. And then the next day we made a dough. And then the following day we made pizza out of it and served it to them for lunch. And these kids were so pumped. And then the following week we planted that wheat in a garden box behind the school, and they watched it grow a year. And my son, who is usually petrified at me being near school and embarrassed by dad jokes and stuff like that, was just pumped. He's like, man, we watched the wheat grow every day behind our school. They followed it through the season until ultimately, what was it, Stephen? The groundskeeper inadvertently mowed it down.
Somebody who will remain nameless mowed it down thinking it was weeds.
So unceremonious ending, but nonetheless, they actually, Tyler replanted again next year. And I was so energized to be in that environment teaching kids. And then the Colorado Grain Chain formed, I think, right around that time. And I was on the board of directors. And a couple years later, I approached Stephen about ideas for partnering with the greater school district in Boulder to bring some local grain into the kitchen and feed it to all the kids, and not just class, not just teaching. And, Stephen was phenomenal. It was a 3-minute conversation, and he said, absolutely anything we can do, we're on board. And that's kind of how it's been with him and his team since then. So I feel like we kind of hard to follow up after Barb. And I just want to say that was incredibly inspiring. But we've been doing some great stuff, and I'll hand it over to Stephen to chat a little bit about it.
Yeah, I want to emphasize we're a school district of quite a different scale, Barb. I was also similarly impressed just at the diversity of products, how many different things you're producing and kicking out. We in the past have only done a healthy dessert once every 2 months on our menu, so just 5 times a year. And so it's just an occasional offering, but it does get the students excited, and we do find it translates into higher meal sales on those days since we put it on the menu. And in this case, we have a baker with some acumen and some skill, but we're also talking about 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 portions of one item. So it's, huge amount of hotel pans or sheet pans that are required to pump out this. And we have a new facility. It's a culinary production facility, but it wasn't designed as a bakery and it wasn't designed to bake. So we are using a mix of budget ovens and combi ovens and kind of putting it all together without a true bakery equipment, really. So this project was exciting just because we've, like Mana mentioned, we've bought in the past just ultra grain flour of a certain variety. We buy a pallet of it at a time and use it. But when we had the opportunity to do a smaller purchase, wanted to work with Andy closely on this and get some of his expertise and just the community excitement around it. And so it was a really successful event. Anything that gets the students jazzed and excited to be in our cafeteria is awesome. And the quality was really good as well. With the scale we're doing and that huge amount of portions, it's about consistency, trying to get a consistent, good product so that nobody gets, a raw, uncooked version of it. And so consistency is still a challenge. So trying to make sure it's always going to be really good, consistent moving out the door. Getting the local grain allotment in advance so that we can recipe test it is important. So it's not coming in the door last minute. Andy provided us with samples in advance so we could play with it a bit. And just continuing our ethos of supporting local agriculture, not just fruit and vegetable purchasing, which we've done for many years, and local meats, but moving into the grain terrain has been really exciting for our program. I'm going to let Mary say anything she could add from our team as well.
I think I'll just chime in. Someone had asked a question of Barb, which Barb, I also was very similarly impressed with all of the recipes that you all have created, and it looked really good. But the question about cost, I think, is a really good one, because as a school district, we're funded through the USDA National School Lunch Program. So we get about $3 per meal to spend on that lunch for students. And after overhead and staff time and equipment, we're usually left with, and this is across the country, most districts are left with about $1.25 to spend on the actual food. So that's really a tight budget to be able to purchase food that's going to create a really delicious meal for those students. And that's why a lot of districts rely on, pretty fast heat and serve items that, the pre-made chicken patty that they can slap on a bun. That's why a lot of school districts are kind of forced into that area for cooking. So I think thinking about farm to institution, it's really important to know some of the factors at play and know, they might, institutions might be on a very limited budget. We are. However, a lot of districts like us, like Barb, really prioritize and understand the value of purchasing locally and purchasing heirloom whole grains. And so we can work around it and figure out ways in our budgets to make room for it, sort of how we have, okay, we can do once a month a healthy dessert, or this past spring we actually just started buying some beans grown in Boulder County because they came in at a really great price point that was similar to what we were paying previously. So I think the question about price is a super big one for institutions, and a lot of it comes down to really talented food service directors and procurement managers who can figure out a way to use that $1.25 per meal to be able to source locally and prioritize that. So, yeah.
I mean, I think the creativity piece is huge. I worked for a large national, now international natural foods grocery chain for 15 years that at the onset, we were the biggest champion of local, farmers and producers and artisans and craftspeople. And then as our company grew, became national programs. And so I would have to call the local egg guy and say, man, I'd love to work with you, but I can't. We have this national program and there's a national budget. And the company grew and grew, and it got really hard to keep the best part of what the company was, these local farmers that were doing direct deals and great creative, thinking outside the box. And so I feel like it, institutionally, you've got to be incredibly creative to work through those budget constraints. And I, really applaud those folks who were able to figure that out. Want to comment on what I saw some of the successes of the approach that, Stephen and his team took at our school district here. One of them, you've got ultragrain flour. Now there's a few varieties of ultragrain. There's the, 100% whole grain variety, which is a whole grain white wheat variety that's milled to an incredibly fine spec. So, visually it just looks like talcum powder or white flour, but it is in fact whole grain. And then there's a blended product that's half white flour and half, or maybe it's 51% whole grain and 49% white flour. And then I think there may be another item as well. So there's a few different ultra grains, but I think that white wheat and a really fine granulation size is the key in sneaking whole grain into kids food. You can take a pizza dough and you can sneak it in at 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% before they even notice. You can take a lemon cake, as Carrie did, and you can put in almost a majority of whole grain. So we used locally grown whole grain and we blended in a small portion of the ultra grain. Nobody knew what was hitting them. They just said, man, this tastes great. And they, we served it at our Louisville school together, Stephen and I and the team, and the kids just pounded it, So I think that, starting where you are with them, I don't think we're going to create 100% Danish rye bread and serve it to a fifth grader and have them say, this is delicious. Unless it's, maybe not Nana. When Nana was a kid, she would say that's all she wants. But yeah, so we're looking forward to doing more collaborations with local grain farmers and the school district. What I'm trying to establish is a sort of cost plus program for the farmers so that they don't lose any money on it, but are contributing, a small margin tacked onto their grain cost. And if there's a mill somewhere in between, milling flour costs pennies. It's a very inexpensive thing. I own a mill. I can mill flour from mill grain from a local farmer at pretty much no cost. And if we're contributing to the health and well-being of the kids in our community, anybody would be happy to, again, do a very low cost program so that it fits the budget. And I think that's how we're going to start. Get buy-in, get excitement, get parents excited to donate money to their local foundations and school systems and such.
Yeah, that's a good point, Andy. That just came up from Libby there. Do parents support these things, or are there community members that could donate some extra money? I do know that in Durango, this is the case. So, it comes maybe down to that freedom within the menu and the recipe creation that, school districts need. Just that extra little bit of funding makes you perhaps not look at the numbers so closely because you're gonna make it.
Sure, and maybe it's chipping in 10 or 20% of the local grain, right? That's, I believe, one of your early slides referenced that. It doesn't have to be 100% local, 100% whole grain, although we strive for 100% whole grain. But just chip in a little bit and just start somewhere. Parents were pumped. Parents were elated. They had, it's heirloom grain. Everybody likes heirloom tomatoes because they're beautiful and juicy and taste way better than a California tomato or an average tomato. But heirloom grain is very boring looking for the most part. It just looks the same as, unless it's corn or something really wild. And, it hasn't really made it to farmers markets. You can't really buy local grain at farmers markets with some few exceptions. And so as people are like, heirloom grain grown, in a farm that we go eat farm dinners at, like that's inspiring. So for me, it's, it's sort of the marketing component of it. And you're creating this energy from onboarding parents and kids. And so it's a long-term, concept that we're pushing here.
Yeah, one more, comment is to think about in your school districts that when children grow their own, they will eat it too. And so I think when children start to bake bread in schools again, because they used to, but that has all gone away with the loss of home economics in schools. They will eat different types of whole grain products. So it's just something that hopefully with time, will come back and will return, and school gardens could have corn and other grains so students can can look at them and experience them. It's definitely changed at UCCS the students, right? This becoming part of a system and of a value chain, and growing it and baking with it and milling it and doing all that hands-on. Nobody ever asks for a white roll when they have done this. It doesn't even cross their minds. They know how to make it. So it's really interesting. So thank you so much for this great representation of K through 12. We're going to switch to hospitals now. And gosh, this is just a really great opportunity to have two experts here from two different organizations and start that conversation with grains and beans, legumes to hospitals. I just wanted to share with you very briefly let's see, I think this was here, very briefly what we identified in hospitals for our themes. Hopefully this works. It's very similar to the other institutions, the vision and the alignment of the hospital mission with the value of the hospital and with the food system of the hospital and paying more attention to food. Institutional buy-in is critical, so it would have to be a leadership who is on board with more local food procurement. And then the similar relationships among food service and farm workforce, as well as the food hubs themselves. What I got from speaking with Southwest Health was really that the chefs were there to make healing food for the patient. So that was very inspiring for me to hear that, and that also brought up the communication around hospital gardens and greenhouses. And Sean has some experience from Penrose Hospital growing greens for Penrose. And then, of course, there's an experiential education opportunity. I'm thinking about dietitians, being in hospital rotations as RDs or becoming RDs who could do some food literacy and grain literacy right there in the common grounds in the future. Similar challenges: seasonality, supply, budgets, lack of processes established, and group purchasing. And I'm sure that we're going to hear a little bit from Susan on this. There's a real opportunity to reinvent, hospitals in terms of food literacy hubs and bringing farmers markets to hospitals and having hospital gardens and just bringing that food forward. There's a couple of examples here with the Chef's Playground in Boston, for example. If the hospitals don't serve good food, I don't know where we're going, especially after COVID-19. So now I'm going to give the floor to Susan Bridle Fitzpatrick, and I'm so excited to hear from you and actually see you in not exactly in person, but after having some incredible phone calls, and hopefully this will really trailblaze our collaboration, followed by Inke that we've talked about with many times. So Susan, you can have the screen share.
Great, thank you. And it's wonderful to be here with you all, and I'm so excited to see the examples of your successes and experiments and recipes. So just a brief introduction to myself. I wear a few hats, and I teach at the University of Denver. I have my own healthy food strategies consulting business, and then I also have worked with Healthcare Without Harm on and off over the years in a few roles. One big role that I did with them a few years ago was a big national research and advocacy campaign around how hospitals can use their community benefit resources to promote healthy food access in their communities. And there is some great work that hospitals are doing around healthy food outside hospital doors or engaging with the wider community, such as community gardens and all kinds of projects that are happening around the country. This project is looking specifically at procurement and serving of beans in hospital settings. And so this is a specific pilot project that I'm going to talk with you about today. And just a little bit of background about Healthcare Without Harm for folks who haven't heard of this organization. This is an international organization that's been around for more than 25 years, and it works with the healthcare sector to try to promote more environmental sustainability and reduce the climate footprint of the sector globally. And because the healthcare is such a big part of the economy, it has a big, environmental impact. They have many programs, and the food program is just one of the programs that they do. And that's work with the food program is what I'm talking about today. So Healthcare Without Harms has a few pilot regions across the country where they've been working with hospitals for 15, 20 years on initiatives connecting hospitals with work in their communities, and then also with procuring local and healthy and sustainable food. This project I'm talking about today is the first pilot project that Healthcare Without Harm has done in Colorado, and it's part of a larger project, USDA grant being experimented with in 4 regions across the country. But I did want to tell you, just to give you an example of another initiative in Oregon, which is a little bit similar to this one, and it gives you a sense of some of the kinds of things that the organization does. So a current initiative in Oregon is working with EcoTrust and Prosper Portland, which is the city's economic development agency, to prepare local smaller businesses owned by people of color for institutional procurement opportunities. And the cohort of 5 businesses working with the Healthcare Without Harm and Kaiser Permanente and Legacy Good Samaritan is to develop products for the grab and go options in the hospital's food service operations. And so they're experimenting with a few products, including a blended meat taco crumble, a polenta and chili pie, tamales, a Haitian stew, and a frozen vegan dessert. And so there are a number of initiatives across the country where Healthcare Without Harm is looking to source healthy and sustainable food, but oftentimes it's also to get involved with local businesses that are producing value-added products, which hospitals seem to be pretty interested in. And it's a way to support the farmers, but also the local businesses. And so that kind of approach is similar to what we're doing with this project. So you all are familiar with the idea of plant forward. And so this, just to say briefly that this initiative that I'm talking about today is part of Healthcare Without Harm's Plant Forward Future campaign that has a lot of tentacles and projects involved. And as you are all you're familiar with this messaging about celebrating plant forward menuing. It's in a with really positive and messaging that doesn't make people feel like we're taking meat away from them, but we're just really emphasizing and celebrating plant forward and more sustainable diets. And just because I know we're a little bit short of time, I'm going to just skip through this really quickly, but we have some messaging that and communications and education that we're doing with hospitals to really educate folks about the benefits of plant forward. And so you all are very familiar with this. There's a health argument, a human health argument. There's a sustainability argument. There's also, a climate argument because animal source foods are a big contribution to greenhouse gas emissions. And I'm happy to share these slides with you all, but I'm sure you're all familiar with these ideas. But in the end, what we kind of emphasize and what seems to resonate the most with hospitals is the bottom line as the most compelling argument. And simply, there's increasing demand across the US for plant-forward menu choices. 44% of consumers are trying to increase their intake of plant-forward proteins like beans and nuts, and nearly 8 in 10 millennials look for meat alternatives. In the healthcare setting, Facilities Management Magazine reports that plant-forward menus can lead to an increase in patient and employee satisfaction rates, and that 83% of diners in hospitals say that they would choose plant-forward options at least sometimes. So this is making the case. So let's dive into this particular pilot project. Healthcare Without Harm received a USDA grant to promote the purchasing and serving of locally grown plant-based proteins in 4 regions of the US: California, the Pacific Northwest, and New England, all are regions where Healthcare Without Harm has been working on the ground with hospitals for many years, and then also in Colorado. And so this is the first pilot here, and we're really just beginning to establish relationships with hospitals here. And each region is working with the nuts, seeds, or beans that are grown in that region. In Colorado, beans are the plant-based protein that we excel at producing. So that's what we're focusing on here. And in the project overall, this is really about supporting local farmers and food businesses with an emphasis on regenerative production and supporting smaller scale business, minority and women-owned businesses to scale up to meet the needs of institutions, both at the level of the farmers and at the level of the businesses that are producing the value-added products. And really to promote, market, and educate hospital customers about the benefits of a plant-forward diet. So beans, I'm a big lover of beans and have been working with beans and celebrating and promoting beans in a lot of ways for years. This is a great project to feature on a very important crop in Colorado. Colorado ranks 8th in the country in bean production, and they are well suited to our climate. They're the most efficient protein source that we can produce. And so, beans are great. I can't say enough about beans. And we produce a lot of different kinds of beans in Colorado. Pinto beans are the bean that we're most known for and that we produce the most of. So this project is really flourishing in the context of collaboration with a lot of other organizations that are working in this space right now. This is an exciting time with a lot of new initiatives to promote local purchasing of healthy foods in hospital settings. And we align and are collaborating with a number of partners. So first, the Colorado Healthy Hospital Compact, and we're going to be hearing from Inka Deku in a minute. We're really working to partner with her and the work that she's done for some years to generate enthusiasm among Colorado hospitals for healthy food. And participating in this project is a way to help meet the hospitals that are participating in the compact to meet some of the goals around serving healthy menu items and also healthy marketing. And then there's the Boulder County's new beans initiative, which I think some of you have heard about. And so as you may know, Boulder County is helping to transition some of the county's farmers to producing non-GMO crops. And the county promoted the production of a beautiful crop of 95,000 pounds of pinto beans this last growing season using a number of regenerative practices. And the Boulder County collaborating farmers are aiming to produce 300 pounds of pinto beans this coming season. So when we came into this project, we were originally thinking that we would be sourcing beans from a number of different farmers, smaller scale farmers, and looking to work with minority farmers or basically farmers that didn't have access to the market. However, the reality on the ground here was that Boulder was here and producing a lot of beautiful, sustainably produced beans and working to sell them and promoting them through the same markets that we were. So we thought, you know what, let's just work together. And so we kind of got married to Boulder County and the beans. And for at least the purpose of this pilot, we're going to be focusing on their farmers and their produce and their crop. And then we have other partners with Nourish Colorado. Chef Fernando's on this call. They're going to be playing a really valuable role with education and culinary training and some recipe development with the hospitals. East Denver Food Hub has a role in, they're currently storing the beans that Boulder produced last year. And so they have a role as an intermediary. And then we have some connections with the Good Food Purchasing Program as well. So the way that we're messaging this to hospitals is that this is a great way to meet the organization's goals around employee health, community health, and supporting the local economy. It's also a great way to meet growing demand for plant-forward options. It's also a great opportunity to support Colorado producers and a regional resilient food system. And then hospitals do get a lot of resources and support out of this pilot. We're creating promotional and educational materials that are customized for the hospital to educate the customers around the benefits of plant forward and about the features of the particular products that we're serving. We'll be providing support with menuing strategies and recipe development, culinary training to ensure staff confidence and buy-in and enthusiasm and smooth implementation of the new products, and nutrition and wellness, education and wellness events and activities through perhaps the wellness department or basically customized in different ways for the different hospitals for what they want to do and what they think that their staff, and really we're targeting mostly staff because they're the ones that eat there most of the time. But what are the things that are going to advance the hospital's goals and make this fun? And basically we were trying to make beans sexy and exciting and trying to, have farmer events and other kinds of events to make this fun. And then in the end, because Healthcare Without Harm is a national and actually international organization, we will be lifting up the success and promoting the work that the hospital is doing at a state and national level. So in terms of participation, like what's involved for hospitals? So the goal, this is a pilot, it's a small, it's a small scale project to test this approach. We're forming a cohort of hospitals of 4 to 5 hospitals. We've actually formed the cohort now and had our first orientation and kickoff meeting last week, as a matter of fact. The next step is for those hospitals to identify products of interest and come to consensus around a couple of products that they want to purchase in order to aggregate the demand so that we can basically make the purchasing pathways work. They'll test and give feedback on the products, make sure it's something that, they like the taste, they like the pack size, the features of the product are really going to work for them in the hospitals. And then there's some data collection involved that we'll need to basically track and the success of and the impact of the project for reporting back to the USDA. And then the hospitals will be involved in quarterly meetings as a cohort, and then there'll be periodic touch points in between. And this, this just in terms of the time requested of the hospitals has been something I've been very aware of because, they're always extremely busy, hospital staff, food service staff, but particularly just during COVID, it's been a challenging time to basically say, hey, we want you to do something more right now this year when your head's already on fire. So we're trying to be very sensitive to being very efficient with the time that we're requesting from folks. So what are some of the challenges that we've seen so far? It was a little bit more challenging than I expected to recruit hospitals to participate. I think, for the reasons that everybody understands. But in addition, COVID made it more challenging. And then the farm to hospital movement here in Colorado is not as well established as it is in other regions of the country. Hospitals also report budget limitations. So you're all familiar with that. Also limitations of staff time to do any kind of more scratch preparation. There's some, heard limitations about that. And then also one thing I definitely heard, especially with the larger hospitals that we're working with in the metro region, is that most of them feel like really a pressure to work with their existing distributors. So that means that's like the game board that we're playing on and how to make it work within that context. And then, more broadly, Healthcare Without Harm has lessons for how to make this work, but clearly, you need to get buy-in from folks that have decision-making power. And in the case of hospitals that have food service management companies that are contracted, say with Sodexo, to run their food service, they will do what their client, that is the hospital, tells them to do. So ultimately, you need, to really make this work, you need to get real buy-in from leadership that can then place the demand on the food service management companies for what they want to see happen in the hospitals. That applies to other kinds of institutions as well, but that's something that we're seeing here, and those relationships take time to build. So skipping to where we're at now, so we formed the cohort of hospitals. These are folks that are kind of leaders in healthy food. They're excited about trying this. They're excited about the goals. But we learned a few things about what they're interested in. So we did a survey of hospitals across the country that were interested in this project to find out what plant-based proteins they were using and in what forms and how they bought them and what they were interested in using, et cetera. And what we found across the country is that hospitals don't purchase dried beans, and they pretty much don't want to. Hospitals do buy dried lentils, but other beans, they just don't buy. They buy them canned, they buy them frozen. Sometimes they buy them in a freeze-dried form. And although in the longer term, I think we want to work with hospitals to move in the direction of buying dried beans for all the obvious reasons that we all know in terms of the quality, the sustainability, and all the great reasons to buy dried beans. They just don't. And so given the limited time frame of this project, we've got to start where we are. And what we've moved on pretty quickly to is focusing on a value-added product that the hospitals could be excited about. And for the purposes of this pilot, which is also about supporting local producers, which includes not just farmers, but also businesses that make products with sourcing local ingredients, that's okay in terms of achieving our bigger goals with this project. So we've moved on to try to identify, what kind of value-added products that the hospitals get excited about using. And so in our call last week, we talked about a phase 1 product that is something that we could move forward on more quickly because it's a little bit less complicated, and we already have identified some producers who could do that. And then a phase 2 product that will take a little bit more time. So what we found is that there's some pretty good interest in either a whole, like a really quality cooked bean, just simply seasoned with low sodium in a bag, a BPA-free bag that would be either just refrigerated or frozen. So they would buy a box of these bags, and the bags would either be 4, 5, or 10 pounds. And actually a 4-pound bag like this, because it doesn't have a lot of liquid in it, is equivalent to a number 10 can of beans. We've done some research with companies that are doing products very similar to this, and also other, processed products that are in bags like this. And there are some benefits. I mean, one is, first, we don't have canneries in Colorado. So if we want to support local businesses, that's off the table. But there are a number of businesses in Colorado that are doing this, and it's becoming more and more common to do, volume product in bags like this. It's BPA free. And there are some other, features that make institutions is interesting for institutions. It's microwavable, it's steamable, et cetera. And it's a flexible product. This whole cooked bean could be used in a wide variety of ways, pretty much the way that they use canned beans now, but it's going to be a better quality product, and it's going to be local. There's also some interest in a refried bean, but I think we're going to pursue the whole bean first. And then interestingly, when we explored some different products for the second option, we talked about a bean and grain burger. We talked about a savory breakfast bean muffin. We talked about a sweet muffin, and we also talked about a tempeh made with pintos. And you all may not know that tempeh can be made with different kinds of beans. That's a picture right there of the traditional soy tempeh, but it can be made with pintos, and then that would be locally sourced, which would be great. So one of the hospitals in our cohort uses tempeh, is excited about it. It's a big success. And when she was talking about it, the other hospitals went, wow, that, they got really excited about it. So I think we're going to pursue this pinto tempeh idea as our phase 2 product. Some issues that came up in conversation as the hospitals were discussing the products. One was if they're going to find a product that's going to work in both the retail cafeteria and in the patient menu, it needs to be low in sodium. And then one of the hospitals is a children's hospital that has even higher needs than maybe some other hospitals about products being being free from allergens, and also other products that tend to be reactive. And so when it came to talking about the muffins or the burger, it's not impossible, but if you start listing all the ingredients that we would need to avoid, it just started to get a little complicated. So we thought maybe we should stick with the tempeh, since there was enthusiasm about that. There's also we also need to be able to aggregate enough demand with these products to be able to identify a business that will be able to produce it, and then also to work with with the distributors that the hospitals are requiring us to work with to get that into their catalog. And so what it looks like is that we're going to be working with Cisco FreshPoint and get these products into Cisco FreshPoint. And I may reach out to some other institutional contacts that I have. DU has actually got a pretty big commitment to local purchasing, and I'm hoping maybe we can bring them in as well. So what you're seeing here is this is not like a radical transformation of our food system. And particularly because we're working at this point, we're intending to work with Cisco FreshPoint. We're not, we're not shifting to local distribution. However, our plan is just baby steps, start where we are, create norms, create enthusiasm about local products, and then hopefully be able to expand the role of East Denver Food Hub to hopefully take over the distribution of this product and other products as we sort of work further and more deeply with hospitals on local purchasing. So that's basically the picture. We're learning a ton. And little by little, I think this can be exciting, but like I said, we're starting where we are.
That's wonderful. Wow, inspiring. Thank you. I just feel like the grains are right there on the fingertips. to bring those out also in. Thank you so much, Susan, for sharing that. We are a little bit on the short side for time, so I would encourage everyone to stay on just a little longer, and for UCCS students also to hang out a little longer, because we are going to hear now from Inke de Croo on the Colorado Healthy Hospital Compact, and I think it will round off with a very nice discussion at the end. Know if you are a UCCS student, we are meeting one more time next week at 4:30 together on Zoom as usual. And we hope that everybody can make it, and you'll get an announcement of that. So just know that our class is not over. Okay, so Inke, I will give you the floor now, and then we can discuss some of the hospital matters. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Oh, that's not, I did the same thing. Yeah. Great, can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up from someone? Great, awesome, Susan, thanks. My name is Inke de Croo, and I'm so excited to be here to talk to you all about the Colorado Healthy Hospital Compact. So I have a lot of slides, but I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. I didn't know everyone's knowledge around the compact, around nutrition standards, and so I'm happy to share the slide deck with you all. But I'm Inke de Croo. I'm a registered dietitian and work at the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment in the Healthy Eating Active Living Unit. And I have the honor, the privilege to be able to manage this, the Healthy Hospital Compact. And so today's presentation, I'm going to provide you an overview, because I think knowledge is power, and the more people that know about the compact in the state, I think we can really just see some of the changes being made, especially new young dietitians going into the field, having this knowledge and awareness. I'm going to talk about how the compact is made up of 4 programs, how to join the compact, and the recognitions that hospitals receive by participating. And so it's honestly in a voluntary agreement by hospitals to improve their nutrition environment, following a framework, which I'll go into in a little more detail as I get through the presentation. But there's no monetary exchange between the health department and hospitals. It's really sort of approaching hospitals and sort of aligning their mission statement on health and really practicing that in how it's seen in a hospital with their food service. This is sort of the brand and the look of the Healthy Hospital Compact. When I took this role on, I'll go into a little bit more detail, but the question is, like, why hospitals? Why should hospitals serve healthy food? And it's pretty obvious. It's a pretty obvious reason why we should do it. But surprisingly, a lot of hospitals, their food service is relatively unhealthy, especially their cafeteria side, their public-facing side. And so it's not just about the patient side, it's also about the public-facing side, and thinking about the employees that work at a hospital. Everyone from doctors and physicians to food service to janitorial to across the gamut. If people are spending 40+ hours a week at a hospital and they're eating in the cafeteria, it's really important to really think about the health of the employee as well, not just the patient side. And these are some pictures from a hospital, a few hospitals. Like, it should really present health. Food and health go hand in hand, and really be inviting. Obviously, these pictures were taken before COVID, and COVID just has really shifted a lot of the food practices in hospitals. But really be inviting. Fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, beans, local procurement, low-fat dairy, low-fat meats, things like that, that just sort of are inviting and nutritious. So the compact is made up of 4 programs, and each program has a set of standards that have defined what we have decided that is a healthy nutrition environment. And so it's made up of the Healthier Food Program, Healthier Beverage Program, Breastfeeding Policy and Support Program. Yes, why is breastfeeding there? Because that is the first nutrition that a baby gets in a hospital. And so really being able to have best practice around mom-baby in a hospital is really important so that mom gets the best opportunity to breastfeed if she chooses to breastfeed. And then marketing all of those within a hospital, because you can make the food, you can make these amazing menus, but really having to market from the behavioral aspect to get people to make the healthy choice. So how to join the compact? There's a partner agreement that just essentially says that they're willing to explore the compact, and that if it's not a binding contract, it's just saying, you know, we're engaging this conversation with the state health department, who's going to be responsible for the compact committee at their hospital. So it's a pretty straightforward document. Really, the nuts and bolts of the compact are in what I call the assessment tool. And the assessment tool is designed to support the individual or individuals to understand the entire compact, how the compact is made up of all these different standards. And then why should they do them? So the benefit from the state health department is we can really offer that recognition through the state health department, through various ways, social media, campaigns, recognition events, things like that. So we're able to really sort of like showcase hospitals' work through our channels. What are some other benefits of participating in the compact? It really provides a framework. You know, oftentimes like it's sort of vague as what is a healthy nutrition environment, and the compact really just provides you with that information. We've designed it in a way where we've just say a certain % of your entrees need to meet the standards. A certain % of your beverages need to be healthy. You know, the idea is really to increase the availability of those healthier options and really reduce or eliminate those unhealthy options using nutrition criteria as our guide. Other benefits is that hospitals are allowed to use the brand, the compact brand, and then also having access to a learning community. So I facilitate a steering committee meeting every other month where hospitals come together to sort of share their successes, their barriers, share information on like, how are you doing this? How are you doing that? And it's also an opportunity for me to invite speakers like Susan has presented at the steering committee meeting about her work, and just inviting what others are doing. You know, I can invite anyone from the grain school or as well, you know, just to teach them about what's happening in the community around food and food systems. And it's really about a collaboration to make this change happen. You know, one hospital can't do it. Hospitals love to compete with each other. And so the more hospitals I'm bringing on, it starts a healthy competition with each other. They're like, oh, Denver Health is platinum? How did they get platinum? You know, how do they get to that level? And so then they start to really make changes because they want that higher level of recognition. And of course, public recognition. And so the recognition comes in 4 different levels, and it's based on points. And so the more points you have, the higher level recognition. And so the highest being platinum, gold, silver, bronze. This is just a picture from our event in 2019. And instead of everyone getting a plaque, I gave everyone banners because I was like, you need to showcase your work, big and bold, in front of your cafeteria, in the main hallway, that you are practicing what you preach about health. And so this is an SCL hospital out in Grand Junction, St. Mary's. And so really my role in the health department is to provide program management. I facilitate the steering committee meetings. I provide technical assistance. I created and I move forward with the assessment tool and provide guidance. I review assessment submissions and manage the recognition process. Just wanted to list out the current active participating hospitals. And so you'll see that organized by level. And so we have 3 hospitals that are platinum. And I do want to, because I'm not going to go into the beverage program very into detail. I'll go into the food program into some detail. But those 3 hospitals have removed sugar-sweetened beverages. You cannot get a sugar-sweetened beverage at Children's, Denver Health, or Lutheran. And Denver Health is our biggest FQHC, which is a federally qualified health center, and they serve the highest population of Medicaid participants. And so they see a real, like a huge population that historically has not had access to a healthy food environment for various reasons. Not only that, they have a subway on site. When you go to the emergency room, they have a subway to the left. The subway has even acknowledged and does not sell sugar sweetened beverages. And so that Subway is the most visited Subway in the country. And I think that's just like makes a statement to the city that the hospital is saying a statement to the community that we care about your health. And even this corporate huge chain restaurant is following the guidelines. They didn't have to do that. And so it's huge. As well as Children's Hospital, there were the second, Lutheran was first. They had a CEO that was just like, no, we need to send a message. And they did that 8 years ago. And so, you know, and all these other hospitals are doing great as well. It's just, you know, I just share those things because sugar sweetened beverages is a lot of points that gets you to that platinum level. And then our partner hospitals on the other side of the screen, they've participated in some sort of capacity over the years. You know, they've never submitted an assessment, or maybe their assessment expired. And so hopefully I can bring them on in the next year or so. But take a look at this. Like, if you have any relationships with these hospitals, or you worked in any of these hospitals, if they're participating, congratulate them. If they're not, maybe we'll nudge them, like say, hey, you know, this is a real good program that I just learned about. And so where does this collaboration fall in when it comes to, I work with Susan on beans. I'm really excited to work with Nana and her students on grains as this continues, because these are healthy products. And if you can get healthy products, it matches the education provided at a hospital. And so you've got staff telling their patients, eat whole grains because it's good for your heart. You know, eat beans. They're healthy. They've got a lot of fiber, you know, all these things. Eat more fruits and vegetables. And so it's really trying to match the food environment to the message that the hospital is sending. And so I'm just going to dive into the food program a little bit deeper. I'll go through the slides really quickly, but just to give you a sense of, like, so where do beans and grains fit in this in the context? Because there's no specific standard around procurement specifically, but really it's that proxy. It's like procuring local healthy foods can make up your daily healthy meal, or your entrees or your sides. So there's 9 standards within the food program. The first standard is a daily healthy meal, that the hospital offers a daily healthy meal that meets a certain nutrition criteria. And so this is the criteria, and then whatever that is, that's within the hospital's decision. But again, like, is this a place to really highlight a local procured item, whether it be grains or beans? This is the children's meal requirements. So this daily healthy entree is that either 40 to 60% of the entrees meet the compact standard. Again, it's not 100%. They don't have to do 100%. It's just a percent. And so depending on if they do 40 or 60, they get more points with 60. Of course, the more, I think it was Andy, that's 100%. Of course, we want 100%, but you know, we're not there yet. And so some hospitals do. Some hospitals have said, we do all whole grains. A healthy side, the same thing. It's meeting a certain nutrition criteria. Offering that healthier side, is within nutrition criteria. Healthy snacks is really think about that vending machine, or all of those packaged items as you walk out of the cafeteria and you're checking out and you see the chips and the candy bars and things like that. Really trying to reduce the number that don't meet the criteria. So again, making the healthier items more available and making the unhealthy items less available. Desserts, really thinking about the portion size of the desserts. So these are really cakes or brownies. We're not saying you can't serve them, but try and maybe serve 25% of those desserts are less than 200 calories. Again, you know, it's all within reason. Food preparation and the use of fat. And so really thinking about those menu designs. Some of our hospitals have removed fryers from their menus on both cafeteria and patient. Some have just done it on patient side, or really just sort of limiting the amount of fried options. You know, because deep fried just increases that fat content. And so really thinking about air frying or baking, eliminating all trans fat from patient and cafeteria food. And then food groups, really thinking about making all the food groups available, and that, you know, there's fruit options with no added sugar, same thing with vegetables, they're not fried, they can be fresh, frozen, or canned. Grains, really offering a total of the grains as whole grain rich is really kind of here. But again, this is saying, like, if you order a sandwich, that you have that whole grain option, but also thinking about how can whole grains be incorporated into those sides and into those entrees. Offering low-fat dairy products, protein, offering non-fried protein foods, you know, such as seafood, lean meats, and poultry and eggs. Offering more seafood, offering seafood at least 2 times a week, offering protein foods from plants such as legumes, beans, and peas, nuts, seeds, and soy products daily. So that's the compact. I went through that very quickly. I just wanted to respect people's time since we're past 6, but I think there's a lot of opportunity with the compact and really thinking, giving hospitals some sort of just guide. And when I took this position, the compact has been in existence since 2014. I've been in this role for 2 years. And so I've made a lot of operational changes to the compact for ease. I'm a dietitian. I worked in a kitchen in a hospital. So I sort of had that mindset of like, if I was in food service, like, I don't have time. I'm running a full operation, food for cafeteria side, patient side. I need this to be easy, and I need to be applauded for the work that I'm already doing, and then really thinking about those bigger changes within the hospital around, you know, beverage, getting those higher points to get to that platinum level. So I'll sort of pause there, but I'm really curious to hear from the group. You know, what is your experience in a hospital, or sort of like, what are some, you know, just considering like changing the movement within a hospital system to really think to value local procurement and really think about valuing the food that is served and offered and sold. And it goes back to, Nana said it perfectly in her slide when she introduced Susan and I. It's a lot of leadership buy-in. You know, it comes down to the bottom dollar for food service. Oftentimes they're not part of, you know, it's not reimbursable. You can't submit a claim for a meal that you can with a patient that comes into the hospital. And so really, how does it come back down to that value?
Wow, wonderful. Maybe Inke, you can take off the screen share. Great. Yeah. Have you thought about the you know, the influence of the employees? I'm thinking about of course, the customers, you know, the patients, they come in, the customers, maybe the visitors, but what about, you know, the employees building kind of a, you know, a voice for better food?
Oh, absolutely. So I have more luck, honestly, these days. The last couple of hospitals I've recruited, I go to HR. I go to their human resources because they have a wellness director, or really just thinking about working with the wellness side of the health system. And so, yeah, I had more luck with them, and they have to sort of just hand hold food service to sort of bring them along. You're like, yep, this is why we're doing this. Like, this is, and tying it back up to the strategies, some of the strategies from the hospital's perspective as well. And I've also used the case of the community benefit dollar. I've challenged hospitals with that same thing. I said, you're a nonprofit hospital, you're investing in the community, but your own employees are the community as well, especially your hourly wage employees. I just, you know, like food service, janitorial, you know, there's a whole system within the hospital that still, during COVID, still had to run, that still had to operate. Hospitals could not shut down. And so really thinking about hourly wage employees and their health.
And I just echo the sentiments about the focus on the staff at hospitals. I mean, they're the ones that eat there day in and day out. And so Healthcare Without Harms, a lot of our campaigns and a lot of our tracking of our impact has to do with looking at the results of and messaging for the staff. And that's what we're doing. Actually, we have a customer survey that's going to be focused on staff and run through wellness departments at the hospitals. And also ditto to what Inga said about I have found biggest success of working with HR and wellness departments. They're the biggest champions. And then if you can get them to basically go up to senior leadership to put pressure back down on the food service management companies, that's kind of sometimes the best strategy.
Yeah. Know your stakeholders, right? Yeah. Yeah. Other questions here from participants, attendees? If questions for Susan and Inke for right now.
Yeah, maybe I'll ask a question while we're waiting for chat box stuff. Is it with all of this incredible effort to develop recipes and work on these, what seems to me from the outside a little bit to be this like kind of heavy lift of coming up with maybe a home scale recipe or a recipe concept all the way to a standardized recipe? What resources are being used currently by and this could be a question for Susan, for Barb, and for Inke. Just what resources are you using to access some of these standardized recipes, and like how is that happening for you right now? Are you guys just going on the web finding things and working on it on your own, or are you collaborating with other people in the space? Does it just open that up to anybody if there's any comments?
Well, I can just quickly reply that for this particular pilot, the hospitals often that are participating in Colorado and the other regions are developing enough of a cohort that they actually are even sometimes going to be sharing recipes for these new products. So that's one thing. And then in most of the regions, we're working with somebody like Nourish and like Chef Fernando here to help us develop recipes. So in this case, we've got Nourish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. What about Barb?
For us, it's it's trial and error. There's sharing of recipes, but we're developing them ourselves all the way from there's a home style, then there's the let's try it style, and then let's put it at a menu size. So we kind of keep scaling it, and it's all trial and error for us.
Yep.
I'll just add a little comment. It's great. We at Nourish, we always focus on working with the staff, and I know it's been mentioned before, but they're the ones essentially who are going to be preparing the food. And for a long time, the skills have been kind of lost. So I think the focus on training and professional development so that they're not afraid to test and be adventurous and try those recipes and essentially cook those dry beans because they're so resistant. But hey, we can all do it.
Yeah, that's really good. Good to hear. And I think that's also maybe a possibility, Susan, knowing that you've had 12 months or a little bit, not even 12 months on this project. Is it true? Not even 12 months on this project?
I came in the summer, so even less. Yeah. I guess we're getting close, but yeah.
Yeah, we're getting close, but it looks like there's a community of collaborators that is coming together. And that's really what these projects need, right? That you have partners that believe in the same values and you can collaborate and develop the resources that need to be developed. So, I think everyone knows here already that we have the Colorado Grain Chain Grant, the USDA grant, to expand markets for producers and makers for value-added products. So it's very similar to what both Inke and Susan are working on, but in the grain space. And so we are hopeful that in year 2 and 3 of our grant to be collaborating here with the hospitals directly and bringing, resources to the hospitals and potential to co-market Colorado grown grains in hospitals with recipes and with potentially even one of our famous protein flip burgers. That would be my dream as a product if that could become at least a pilot. It works so well here in our institution, and while they are a lot of work to develop, they really can highlight 100% local burger with the plant forward kind of vision in the background.
I just want to add, something as I've been, like I said, I've been in this position for 2 years, working with hospitals, and I've gotten to learn a lot about the different hospitals and how they're contracted. And so like our bigger hospitals have Sodexo, I think Sodexo is like, just has this, and they're great. I was able to be in touch with the regional manager, and she's 100% supportive of this work and sort of is just like telling her hospitals to join, which makes it easy in a way. But our smaller hospitals, for example, Parkview Medical Center in Pueblo, love Pueblo, near and dear to my heart. Previous role, I used to do a lot of work down there, but their patient side, they've got it covered. They're able to provide all of the nutritionals for their patient side, but their cafeteria side, they wing it. They're just like, and so I think, hospitals like Parkview and Heart of the Rockies Regional Medical Center are really small rural hospitals, really need support. They don't have the infrastructure or the systems or the software to really like print out these like recipes that scale up to whatever number that they need. And so like just keeping that in mind, our big hospitals, we need to work on them with procurement. Like our smaller hospitals need help. They're more able, I think, to procure goods because they're smaller hospitals, and so they have less volume, but they don't have the systems. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah.
So that was a challenge for them. And so they could use a lot of education and support, and I think would be really open to it, to say, wow, I've got some recipes, that can X amount of patients or X amount of portions that I need for the cafeteria side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so those resources are going to be important for them. And that low proco idea, Fernando, what Nourish Colorado has done in K through 12, it would be so valuable for higher education and hospitals. Really critical.
That's the whole intent. The next one we're planning is in the Southeast region, and that's the whole goal, not just K through 12, but institutions from the region so that they can all come work together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Good
I
too.
just want to say too, it's really uplifting and inspiring to hear all of these stories too. I know everybody kind of echoed that, speaker to speaker, but it's just so cool, and having spent some time in kitchens myself with Nana and actually working, seeing Chef Fernando coming in to teach a session. It's like, it just reminds me of just like all the joy that seems to be unlocked in these kitchens, because you have all these people who, they have so much experience and passion for this stuff. And it just seems like they're just waiting to be asked to do some of these things. So it's just so wonderful to hear these stories. It's this is great. And by the way, since we have this recorded, if anybody on the call, presenters, if you'd like a link to this recording, I'm happy to make sure to share that. If you find that to be useful in your networks, you'd like to share this out with some people. It's really incredible process here. So thank you so much.
Yeah, great. Yeah, there's some comments also in the chat box if you want to have a look. There's a question or a comment around conventional produce and organic produce and the wrappings of those and keeping them separate. Yeah, lots of challenges. My goodness. I think, considering it's almost 6:30, I really don't want to hold everybody here for longer. I want to thank everyone for their incredible inputs and really good overviews of the programs and the strides forward. I'm sure that we will be in touch more with more of this, and maybe we can create a little bit of a grain to institution working group here in Colorado and bring Barb on board many times, because it seems like you have a lot of wonderful recipes and just it seems like a food service environment that you've created that just radiates. It radiates of love and warmth and good food, and that's really what we need to recreate. So yeah, thanks everyone, and I wish everyone a really good end of this week. And this is the end of grain school online as we know it. There will be an evaluation that we'll send out for course 3. So if you haven't done that, please do that. And please stay in touch with us through the summer. there's just a lot happening. And then hopefully we'll have the sign up for grain school in the field ready pretty soon. I don't know if I'm going to burn out before I put that flyer together, but it's coming up quickly. And I think our grants too, you know, they're moving into year 2 here pretty quickly. So we are going to reach out to both of you, Inka and Susan, to collaborate with the Colorado Grain Chain. And Andy is currently the president, and I hope that we keep having him as a chairperson for the course of the grant. He's been doing a really great job. So thanks, Andy, and know that, you know, this is really, these were our supporters for the grant, amongst some others as well, but very important collaboration.
Can I grab the mic for a moment?
Yep.
I want to give just a deep from the bottom of my heart appreciation to you, Nana, for inspiring me and everyone on this call and hundreds, if not thousands, of people for so many years through grain school and the work you do every day, and the deep effort and work that it takes to pull off this not one weekend in January, but many months worth of work. It's been a transformational journey for me to be a part of your flock, and I cannot thank you enough. So
thank you. Well, it takes you know, a community and good food, right, and lots of heart, and that's what we all bring to the table. And you know, I couldn't do it without Sean, right? For years now. Sean and I have been working on this grain school and other endeavors, and gosh, we wouldn't be able to pull these things off if we were alone, right? We have to be doing these things together, and changing the food system is such a difficult thing. But as we know, when we are in it, there's nothing that stops us. Because why would you want to eat that way? I want to go this way, right? It's just brings us together and glues us. So thank you, everyone, and the attendees of Grain School and all the collaborators. It's been a pretty big journey. And so Sean, maybe you can follow up with our speakers today to send the registration link for Grain School. So if you're interested, please take on the hassle to get in there. There's just so much to learn. And yeah, the next thing is Grain Homeschool in Colorado. I think, Andy, you have the next one maybe next week or in a couple of weeks.
Yep, we've got one on Tuesday with Mike Zakowski, Coupe de Monde de Boulangerie, Silver Award winner, doing home nixtamalization of corn and showing people how to use ash from their ovens to nixtamalize corn and make it more bioavailable and easier to make into things like tortillas and masa. And he's going to show us how to work it in different things like breads and pastries.
Awesome.
Yep, and that's
Great.
at 11 a.m. Colorado time, and we'll send out a link, and you have to register on Zoom.
Yeah, coloradograinchain.com.
Colorado Grain Chain.
Yeah.
I want to sing a quick song for Nana. This is called The Whole Grain Highway, because you know, either you're on the whole grain highway or you ain't going no way. That's what we like to say here at the Grain Chain. But oh, out of tune. I had some white flour today and it made my guitar go out of tune. So here, bear with me for a minute. Oh. You're on the whole grain highway with Nana and me going far away. You're on the whole grain highway. Don't make me pull out my banjo or you'll say, hey, 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 hey. That's just the first verse. There's more to come later, but please join us on the whole grain highway.
Yeah, please join us. Thank you. Fantastic.
That's awesome. Thanks, Andy. That's so great. Yeah, got a big fan right there.
Fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. have a good evening and good rest of the week. And I'm going hiking.
Yeah, girl.
Yeah.
That's the
Get out of
way.
here. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks, Andy.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, thanks, Donna. Good, great
That was-
work. Way to,
Yeah,
way to survive.
gosh, powerful, right? That hospital stuff and